In the 7th year of my marriage to Michael, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness. It was stage 4 stomach cancer, incurable, but I didn't dare tell him, afraid he'd be upset, even more afraid he'd fall into despair before facing death. I wanted to visit the place where we first met one last time, as a final farewell trip. However, the night before we were to leave, he suddenly said he had to go on a very urgent business trip. Though disappointed, I dutifully waited for him to return home. But that very evening I accidentally clicked into a live stream, only to see Michael on screen, head bowed, kissing the young, beautiful girl in front of him. I didn't cry or make a fuss. I packed my belongings and embarked on the journey alone. This time, I wanted to face death by myself. 01 When I discovered Michael's infidelity, I was planning next month's travel itinerary, with stage 4 stomach cancer. I didn't have much time left. I wanted to create the most beautiful memories with Michael in my remaining days. The itinerary filled several pages, making my arm ache terribly, so I opened my phone, intending to scroll through some short-form videos to relax. But just my luck, I accidentally clicked into a live stream. Michael, who had claimed he was going on an urgent business trip out of town, was now on screen, head bowed, kissing the young, beautiful girl in front of him. The live chat comments scrolled rapidly. Look at those long legs, those broad shoulders, that narrow waist. Clearly, he has amazing stamina. Ah, that kiss is so passionate. The handsome guy and beautiful girl are a perfect match. This world is just a huge makeshift stage, and we're all NPCs. Seeing the main characters kiss even when watching a travel live stream, netizens were fangirling over them. The combination of the handsome man and beautiful woman was indeed eye-catching. The intense chemistry in their kiss was almost drowning. I stared intently at the live stream, unable to believe the man in the video was Michael, but his silhouette and figure were too familiar to me. And as the blogger's camera got clearer, his familiar profile was exactly how he looked when I fell in love with him at first sight, completely unchanged. The Michael who once had eyes only for me. How could he have cheated? The blogger had initially captured them by chance, but seeing the live stream's popularity soar, dared to move closer, getting an even tighter shot. As the high-definition camera came in for a close-up video, Michael quickly noticed something was amiss. H always disliked having his picture taken. In our 7 years of marriage, apart from our wedding photo, we had pitifully few photos together, let alone a close-up video. Just like now, Michael's brow furrowed slightly. He looked somewhat annoyed, but before he could react, the girl in his arms spoke first. Michael, someone's filming us. I want more people to know about our relationship. The girl was young and beautiful, with a hint of childishness in her voice. Michael looked down at her, unable to resist lovingly tracing her nose with his finger. All right, whatever you want, as if to humor the girl. Michael put his arm around her waist and smiled at the camera. The live chat comments scrolled wildly again, saying his smile was captivating, so handsome it made people weak in the knees. The girl in his arms, however, had an exceptionally shy expression, leaning into him, looking incredibly charming and adorable. In that moment, the pen I was holding snapped in my hand. The sharp part pierced my flesh, and blood flowed onto the floor, yet I felt no pain, simply staring, almost masochistically, at the live stream screen. On the live stream screen, the host approached them with a camera, smiling as they asked, "Hello, are you two a couple? You look so good together." Michael heard this, and looked down at the girl in his arms. The girl, blushing at the question, snuggled deeper into his embrace. His smile grew even more doting, and he even leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Yes, she's my girlfriend." Michael deliberately emphasized my girlfriend, making it sound even more doting, and even the host was fangirling over them. "So, are you here on vacation?" The host continued to press. At this, the incredibly shy girl finally peeked her head out from his embrace, shyly saying, "I saw how beautiful the scenery was here, so I pestered him to come on a trip with me." The girl paused, then pulled a small notebook from her bag. She opened the notebook. Inside were incredibly detailed travel itineraries for this place. He was originally very busy, but as soon as he heard I wanted to come here, he immediately put together the itinerary and came with me without a second thought. The rest of her words became a blur. Perhaps it was because I saw that familiar notebook, that familiar handwriting, and my mind went blank. The place they went was Sunstone. I had wanted to go there too. I'd made several pages of the itinerary, but before I could put it into practice, I was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. The feeling of knowing I was facing death was not easy to bear, with little time left. I had planned to go to Willow with Michael, the place where we first met, which had an incredibly spectacular flower field. I was a person who valued ritual, starting in Willow. I also wanted to make my final farewell to him there, so the notebook, filled with itineraries for Sunstone, had been casually tossed aside at home. I never expected Michael to take it and use my itinerary to travel with another girl. I stared intently at the live stream, looking at the two people holding hands tightly on screen, finding it utterly absurd. 7 years. A full 7 years of marriage. We met in college, dated for 3 years, and decided to marry right after graduation. All our friends said I was lucky to have the most loving husband in the world. But whenever Michael heard this, he would gently put his arm around my waist and softly refute it. He would say, "No, I'm lucky. Having is my fortune." Yet this very man during our 7-year itch, while I was facing a terminal illness, he chose to cheat. 02 I immediately dialed Michael's phone on the live stream. Michael, encouraged by the host, was about to talk about their dating history to the camera. But upon hearing that familiar ringtone, his body stiffened, and his expression became somewhat unnatural. He shook his head at the girl, then picked up his phone, turned his back to the camera, and walked a short distance away to answer the call. The host was curious, and the girl still standing there explained, "He's really busy with work." But he pushed everything aside for me. See, another work call just came in. Despite her words, the smile on the girl's face had clearly faded. The phone call connected. Watching's back on the live stream screen, I spoke, suppressing my emotions. "Is work going smoothly?" He mumbled an affirmation, deliberately lowering his voice. "Work's very busy. It's a huge project. I probably won't have time to call you these next 2 days. Just rest well at home. I'll take you on a trip next month, okay, sweetie?" It was the same tone as always, tinged with doting tenderness, which I had once believed was exclusively mine. Ultimately, it was just wishful thinking on my part. I clutched my phone tightly, looking at the young, beautiful girl on screen. The vitality and youth she possessed were things I had completely lost. Perhaps it was because I was facing death that I, who used to be unable to control my temper, could be so calm this time. "Michael, come home." My voice was utterly calm, as still as a stagnant pool, incapable of stirring even a ripple. He paused, then rejected me without hesitation. "Grace, this work is really important. Be good, I'll be home in a week, then I'll take you to Willow, okay?" "No," I refused resolutely, stubbornly wanting him to come back. "Your work is always so busy. Can't you ever put it aside for me, just once?" If not, then why could he abandon work for another girl and travel with her? Was I not worth it? Or was this his true nature, and he had simply put on a good act all these years, blinding me? "Michael, I wasn't even sure what I wanted to say, but before I could finish, the girl turned and waved at him. Michael noticed her gaze and quickly said, "Don't make a fuss. I told you this work is very important. I have another crucial meeting later. I'll call you tonight." With that, he hung up the phone call without a moment's hesitation. I watched Michael on screen. After hanging up the phone, he turned and practically ran towards the girl. The girl pouted, looking a little unhappy. "Michael, you promised to focus on me this trip." Michael smiled indulgently, ruffled her hair again, and pulled her into his embrace. "Okay, I'll focus only on you. I promise I won't answer any more calls." Hearing this, the girl finally smiled happily, cheerfully putting her arm around his shoulder as they walked away. Watching the man who had grown increasingly mature after marriage disappear from the live stream screen. The man who had promised to be with me forever ultimately broke his word. I sat numbly in the room all night. That travel itinerary, I picked it up and put it down repeatedly. I wanted to tear it up, but couldn't bring myself to. Finally, I opened the luggage I had prepared days ago, took out everything that belonged to Michael, and went to Willow alone. This journey towards death was, after all, my solo destination. 03 in Creek. I found a BB to stay in. The owners were an elderly couple. They had no children of their own. They had a dog named Buddy. Buddy was plump, and when he first saw me, he wagged his tail and circled around me. Grandma said Buddy was just greedy, like a child, not at all shy. He smelled the snacks in my bag, so he was trying to charm me. I had always wanted a pet, but Michael didn't like them and had a slight allergy to fur. So it never happened. Fortunately, now I didn't have to consider him anymore. I could freely like what I liked. I put the jerky treats I'd brought into Buddy's bowl. He barked twice, then rubbed against my pant leg enthusiastically. Overjoyed, the BB was a bit secluded, so besides me, there were no other guests, but Rose and Grandpa still cheerfully welcomed me. Knowing I was coming, they even prepared a large spread of dishes, saying it was a welcome meal for me. Initially, I felt a bit sad, with certain images lingering in my mind. But once I sat at the dining table, watching Grandpa and Grandma enthusiastically introduce local specialties, their gray hair still so lively, full of zest for life, my mood also brightened considerably. Grandpa loved brewing tea. In his free time, he would move a lounge chair and sit in the backyard. But Rose was impatient and never wanted to savor it slowly with him. Until I arrived and patiently sat with him for an entire afternoon, Grandpa was delighted, introducing his prize tea collection to me one by one. Grandma loved cooking, her skillful hands constantly moving on the cutting board, quickly preparing a table full of delicious dishes. I followed her into the kitchen, but most of what I made were culinary disasters. Grandma looked at the burnt mess it made, furrowed her brow, remained silent for a long time, and finally asked me, "Dear, then at home, does your husband cook?" I shook my head. In all the years Michael and I had been together, both our careers were very demanding, so we always hired a housekeeper to cook and clean for us. That's why my cooking was terrible. But had mentioned he wanted me to learn to cook, saying that the wives of his other male friends in their circle could all cook wonderfully, and he always had to watch enviously. But I hated cooking because it left me smelling of cooking fumes, which was terribly uncomfortable. So he chose to eat food cooked by another girl. The power of big data was too strong. I had only stumbled upon Michael and that girl on a live stream, and the very next morning, I found the girl's social media account on my social media feed. The girl's name was Chloe. She had just graduated from college, an age as charming and fresh as a flower. Her homepage was mostly filled with videos showing off their affection. Perhaps was afraid I'd find out, so there were hardly any direct shots of his face in the videos, but if you looked closely, you could still find clues. Whether it was the matching belt, the watch he wore, or his silhouette, they were all so familiar. Aside from the videos showing off their affection, the rest were cooking vlogs. Chloe seemed to love cooking. Like Rose, she had a pair of skillful hands, and the dishes she made were perfect in color, aroma, and taste. Filling a photo collage, accompanied by a caption, "My boyfriend loves my cooking so much. I'll cook for him for a lifetime." And that post was from a year ago. So this husband, with whom I had never had a single argument since our marriage, and whose affection I had thought was profound, had actually cheated a year ago, enjoying meals cooked by another girl. Grandma saw I was suddenly sad. She reached out and gently patted my back, saying in a comforting tone, "Don't be sad, dear. Grandma will make you something delicious." With that, she turned and called out to Grandpa, who was leisurely brewing tea in the backyard. "Old man, hurry over and help make something delicious for dear." Grandpa jumped in surprise, quickly put down his teacup, and hurried inside, not forgetting to usher me out of the kitchen, cheerfully saying, "Dear, go drink tea in the backyard. Dinner will be ready soon." Then he rolled up his sleeves and started to help out Grandma. I stood at the kitchen doorway, watching them work together with such perfect coordination, a level of synchronicity that could only be built over decades. I used to think that going from high school sweethearts to walking down the aisle, from first love to growing old together, was incredibly romantic. And so I met Michael. We achieved the former, but ultimately not the latter. But it was still a very romantic idea. Just like Grandpa and Grandma, even with their gray hair, they were as devoted as ever. I suppressed all the bitterness in my heart, and suddenly felt that being able to live with such a loving couple before facing death was like a small kindness granted to me by heaven in this incredibly painful final chapter of my life. Just a little was enough. I didn't want to suffer. I took a deep breath, waved at Grandpa and Grandma in the kitchen. Then I'll go set the table and wait for dinner. 04 I stayed at this BB for several days. My phone was off, cutting me off from the outside world's distractions, and even time seemed to slow down. Many of the original itineraries were about recalling our first meeting and discovering local popular spots, memories meant for couples who hadn't experienced betrayal. But now that our relationship was broken, those places I had looked forward to for so long were naturally no longer suitable for me to visit alone. Grandma told me that many of those places were actually artificial attractions, not particularly interesting. Willow is built against the mountains, and there are many incredibly beautiful forests that outsiders don't know about. Grandma will tell you all about them. Grandma smiled kindly, pulled up a chair, and began to tell me in detail about the beautiful scenery nearby, especially since it was the perfect season. Grandma took me up the mountain to pick mushrooms. I had initially worried she was too old and unsteady on her feet, but in the end, I was barely keeping up behind her with my basket, half dead, while Grandma was striding as fast as a bird. And I knew I had been wrong. However, I fell in love with mushroom picking. Before my health completely deteriorated, I wanted to see more of this beautiful scenery. When Rose couldn't join me, Buddy would wag his tail and accompany me up the mountain, a person and a dog frolicking on the mountain path. Buddy was very good at playing up to me. As long as I gave him jerky treats, he would obediently help me carry the basket. Incredibly adorable. A week passed, and I even managed to forget about those unpleasant things for a while, except for the occasional cramping pain in my lower abdomen deep in the night, the pain growing more intense, making me unable to sleep night after night. So when I returned to the BB after picking mushrooms, pushing open the BB door and seeing Michael, I was somewhat stunned. "Grace, why is your phone off? I've called you every day for over a week, and it's always off. Don't you know it'd worry? I know you really wanted to come to Willow, but I still had work, and I said I'd come with you next month. Grace, do you have to be so stubborn and sneak off by yourself?" The moment Michael saw me, his eyes filled with anger, and he immediately started scolding me in front of Grandma. Before I could speak, Grandma rushed over. "You, as a husband, scold her the moment you see her? Why don't you ask her how she's been these past few days?" Michael paused for a moment. Perhaps it was out of some respect for Grandma's gray hair. Right in front of him, she just ran off without a word. I was worried about her. I sneered coldly. The images I had seen in the live stream still haunted my mind, especially every night when I tried to sleep. The physical pain made it impossible to get any rest. And those images in my mind became even clearer. Before, there was only physical pain. And the thought that love makes everything bearable, the thought of my beloved Michael, always offered some comfort. But now my body hurt, and my heart hurt even more. I gently shook my head at Grandma, then walked up to him. "I told you to come home, but you refuse, so what's wrong with me coming to Willow by myself?" My voice was cold, a chill I had never had before. Michael's eyes showed a fleeting flicker of panic. He stared intently into my eyes, for what felt like an eternity. But seeing no anger, Michael secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Then unconsciously straightened his back and began to lecture me. "Even if you wanted to come alone, you shouldn't have turned off your phone. What if you ran into trouble?" Ran into trouble? I looked at Michael, and suddenly felt an urge to laugh. "Indeed, perhaps while you were away on your business trip, sleeping soundly somewhere, I might have encountered trouble, perhaps even lost my life, right? At that time, another woman would be sleeping by his side, two of them entwined." Michael seemed to recall that scene based on my words. His face growing terribly pale, he eyed me suspiciously several times, but still saw no anger. I'm usually short-tempered. If I were healthy like before, I would have made a huge scene, not react so calmly, as I was now. But when one is utterly disappointed, hysteria is impossible. Let alone when I had already experienced something even more desperate than this. Michael seemed about to say something else, but the phone in his hand suddenly lit up for an instant. Then his ringtone sounded. Perhaps he was somewhat annoyed. He didn't even check who was calling, and simply answered the phone call right in front of me without thinking. And so Chloe's voice reached my ears. Michael, the girl's sweet, soft voice was so syrupy it made one's bones melt. In an instant, Michael looked utterly flustered. He quickly covered his phone and explained to me. "This is a new assistant the company just hired." It was a transparent lie, but I really didn't have the energy to argue with him. After all, I didn't want to hear him lie to my face. His expression was truly repulsive, but I couldn't control myself. So after I went into the kitchen, I immediately turned around and went to the corner. At that moment, Michael was the only one in the backyard. He stood in a corner of the backyard, glanced around, and once sure no one was there, deliberately lowered his voice. "Chloe, is what you said true?" I couldn't hear the voice on the other end of the phone call anymore, but I could feel Michael's shock. I didn't know what happened, but the phone call was quickly cut off, and Michael hurried towards me. I took a deep breath, pretended I was about to walk out, and then met him. The moment he saw me, he tried to pull me. "Come home with me first. If you still want to travel, then we can." But I didn't even let him finish speaking before I shook his hand off. "Michael, I don't want to go home." I only said that one sentence. Michael stood still, silent for a moment, and surprisingly didn't insist further. Instead, he said to me, "Then stay here and be good, don't turn off your phone again. Some things come up at the company. I need to fly back immediately, if all goes well. I'll be back the day after tomorrow." With that, he turned and left, his movements swift and decisive, and the so-called company issue was nothing more than Chloe calling him. I watched his figure gradually disappear from my sight. Grandma, who had gone back to her room, came out again and gently patted my shoulder. "Dear, I can tell you have strong feelings for him, but how did things get so bad?" After all, Grandma had lived for decades. Some things were clear to her at a glance. I shook my head at her, my smile strained, because you can never truly see into a person's heart. Michael's appearance ruined all my good mood. This past week, my sadness had finally started to improve. But his arrival made me grieve again. He came in a rush and left in a rush. Every action told me, "See, Grace, you're useless. Even when I'm facing death, Michael is still cheating." It felt terribly unfair. 05 So when I discovered I was pregnant, I felt as if the sky, already collapsed, had fallen once more. After left, Grandma noticed my low spirits and quickly pulled Grandpa to prepare a large spread of dishes. But this time, I couldn't eat more than a few bites before throwing it all up. It wasn't a big deal originally. With stage 4 stomach cancer, some vomiting symptoms were normal. Not to mention I had vomited blood 2 nights ago. But afraid Grandpa and Grandma would find out, I spent half the night squatting in the bathroom washing the sheets, my head spinning, feeling like I could die at any moment. But Rose was very worried and quickly had Grandpa drive me on their 3-wheeled cart to the local clinic in the local town. I briefly described my condition to the doctor, and combining that with my period being over a month late, I bought a pregnancy test and took it several times. Confirming I was pregnant, I gently placed my hand on my still flat lower abdomen. Just as I was facing death, a new life appeared here, an extension of my own. Sadly, I was destined not to carry this child to term, with stage 4 stomach cancer. The doctor said I didn't have much time left. Now, I was in so much pain that I couldn't sleep night after night, and I had secretly contacted my attending physician several times. The attending physician didn't give an exact time frame but had subtly indicated I only had a few months left. I wouldn't live long enough to see this child grow, let alone that his father had fallen in love with another woman. To give birth to him would only be another tragedy. 06 Before I could decide what to do about the baby, Michael came again. Not just him, but Chloe as well. Michael's expression was somewhat unnatural, mostly tinged with guilt. "Grace, Chloe is my newly hired assistant. Her work ability is quite good. Since you wanted to come to Willow, I didn't feel comfortable with you being alone. But work is important, so I brought my work here to find you. Chloe also happened to be able to help me with some tasks, so I brought her along." Michael rambled on, but I didn't listen. I walked straight up to Chloe. This girl, who had just recently graduated from college, exuded an aura of youth. Her gaze at me held thinly veiled provocation and triumph. She thought she was hiding it well, but little did she know that youthful arrogance was something I had experienced myself. Why are you staring at me?" Chloe's face became unnatural under my gaze, and her eyes repeatedly darted towards Michael. I said nothing, just slowly raised my hand. "Grace, what are you doing?" Michael lunged forward, grabbing my wrist directly, a look of reproach in his eyes. "Grace, I already said it was for work purposes. What are you doing? Are you just going to hit people?" Chloe also conveniently reddened her eyes, shedding tears pitifully. "Sister, if you don't like me, I can leave, or if you hate me and want to slap me, just do it." Michael immediately turned to her. "What's with this talk of hitting? You haven't done anything wrong. Why would you be hit?" "But Grace doesn't seem to like me." Chloe's voice was full of grievance, and large tears immediately streamed down her face. It was quite amazing how she could cry on command. I tried rubbing my own eyes, but no tears came, only a dry, stinging sensation. Michael turned back to me. "Grace, don't bully her." How am I bullying her?" I cut Michael off directly then, in front of him, slowly let my outstretched hand fall on Chloe's hair. There was a fallen leaf stuck in her hair. I removed the leaf and crushed it in my palm. Helping her remove a fallen leaf is bullying? Michael's face showed a flicker of embarrassment, followed by self-reproach. "That's not what I meant. I just worried you wouldn't like Chloe." "Why wouldn't I like her?" I smiled. "A girl who's quite pretty and has decent values. Of course I'd like her. She hasn't committed breaking the law or shamelessly being the other woman. so why would I be afraid of people disliking her? Hearing my words, Chloe's expression grew even uglier. I smiled again and said, Miss, don't you think I'm right? 07 Of course. She didn't answer my question. After all, as someone knowingly being the other woman, she knew her own place best, and some words were ultimately unspeakable, so she could only swallow them. I didn't welcome Michael's arrival, but the BB wasn't mine. Grandpa and Grandma needed to run their business. The more guests the BB had, the more money they could earn for their retirement. Michael originally said he wanted to share a room with me, but I pointed to the stuffed animals on the bed and resolutely refused him. Grandpa and Grandma were worried I'd be scared sleeping alone, so they gave me all the stuffed animals from their home. Now the bed is fully occupied. There's no room for you. If it were before, Michael would have been relentless, perhaps even a little aggrieved, holding my hand tightly and refusing to leave. He would have said, those stuffed animals can only keep you company for a while. Only I can be with you forever. But the current Michael just hesitated slightly in place, then glanced at Chloe's room not far away, and nodded silently. If you want to sleep alone, then I'll stay next door to you. It didn't matter, just don't come to my room, because there was no space. Only that night, as I was trying to sleep, my body started hurting again. I had barely settled into bed when a wave of nausea and vomiting overwhelmed me, and I almost died in the bathroom. I didn't know if it was the baby in my womb causing trouble, or the torment of stomach cancer. In any case, I was so uncomfortable that I couldn't sleep all night. But the tea Grandpa brewed smelled wonderful. I had originally intended to go to the living room to get some. However, when I pushed open the door, I happened to see the two of them standing in the backyard. Michael was wearing thin pajamas. Chloe stood in front of him, slightly on her tiptoes, her arms wrapped around Michael's neck. Then she leaned in and kissed his cheek. Michael, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't tolerate her. Michael, who was never calm and serious in front of me, now seemed like a smitten young fool, embracing the girl's waist and softly coaxing her. I told you not to come, but you insisted on following. If you weren't feeling unwell, why would I let you act so recklessly? The girl smiled sweetly, but her words were not sweet at all. She said, I just wanted to see what your wife looked like, to understand why you fell for me. I was afraid you were just chasing a temporary thrill, but I truly love you. Love. All I saw was shamelessness, and the husband who once deeply loved me. When did he disappear? I watched the two embracing tightly, no longer able to clearly hear what else they were saying. My stomach churned constantly. I had to cover my mouth and rush back into my room, vomiting a lot of dark brown stuff. I pulled out my phone and looked it up. It was likely blood. My condition had worsened. It was quite uncomfortable. My heart felt even worse, so I made a decision. Not a good one. 08 Chloe seemed to enjoy the thrill of her clandestine affair in front of me. Often, thinking I wasn't paying attention, she would secretly link her hand with Michael's, or stand on tiptoes to kiss his face. Michael, startled, quickly pushed her away, then nervously watched my back. I simply pretended not to see, glancing up to scan the security cameras in the BB's common areas, and there were several in the room hallways too. These things would always come in handy. After all, everyone should pay the price for their actions. But following along was probably not just for the added thrill. She likely wanted to force my hand, so she would always subtly provoke me, or, in front of Michael, show off those teary eyes, combined with a hesitant expression, as if I had bullied her. Just like now, my stomach was terribly uncomfortable, and the delicious food Grandma had made earlier was hard to swallow. I craved sour tangerines, so Grandpa went to the local town early in the morning to buy them for me. I hadn't even eaten one yet when Chloe saw them. The charming young girl, pouting, begged Grandpa for some. Grandpa and Grandma were good people. If they didn't know anything, they would probably like Chloe and happily share their tangerines. But unfortunately, they could see the security camera footage, seeing the two of them embracing in the dead of night, so Grandpa simply ignored Chloe. I didn't want to bother with her either. After taking a tangerine from Grandpa, I moved a chair and lay down in the backyard. Chloe then came up to me again, pointing to the tangerine in my hand and asking, Sister, I've been craving something sour lately. I wonder if you could let me have a tangerine. Sour? My hand paused mid-peel, and an unsettling thought crossed my mind. Chloe, was she pregnant too? I couldn't help but glance at my own lower abdomen. It was still flat. I couldn't even feel the child's presence. Suddenly, I felt a strange sense of relief, grateful that this child was destined not to be born. This way, we could leave together. I wouldn't have to worry that after he was born, His so-called biological father would dote on another child, neglecting mine. My child, already pitiable without a mother, couldn't have a biased father as well. If this world wouldn't be good to him, then it was better he didn't come at all. Gathering my thoughts, I looked up at Chloe in front of me. Her eyes held a faint hint of triumph. In fact, from our first meeting, she had been deliberately showing off, hinting at things overtly and subtly. I merely pretended not to understand, not wanting to disrupt this rare tranquility. But now that her hints had reached this point, she truly intended to break all pretenses, and I suddenly felt a profound weariness. However, these tangerines in my hand were given to me by Grandpa. They belonged only to me, so I shook my head, refusing resolutely. Don't covet what isn't yours. Otherwise, even if you eat it, you'll just throw it up. I had already consulted a lawyer. Michael's business had grown significantly over the years, but all that money was marital property. He had secretly supported another girl behind my back, and legally, I could reclaim half of our assets. In short, I could squander this money freely, or donate all of it to the children in the foothills who needed help, but absolutely not to Chloe. After all, someone knowingly being the other woman was not a good person. I truly disliked such people. Seeing my firm refusal, Chloe still wouldn't give up. Though it was just a few tangerines, she insisted on fighting me for them. So when Michael appeared, she cried on cue with that same speed. I'm just a little hungry. I just want to tangerines. You have so many. Why can't you share two with me? Her voice, slightly tearful, rang out, and Michael quickly came over. Seeing cry, Michael instinctively reached out to comfort her. But then, catching my gaze, he abruptly stopped. He turned to me instead. You have so many tangerines. Share a couple with Chloe. Grandpa and Grandma bought these for me. Why should I share them? I refused, and Michael frowned slightly, seemingly displeased. They're just a few tangerines. If you want, I can buy you a truckload. But there's no need to be so selfish. They're just tangerines, just a few tangerines. Indeed, they were just a few tangerines, but they were my tangerines, a thoughtful gift from Grandpa and Grandma. Why should I give them to anyone else? Especially to the woman who was trying to steal my husband. Even though I didn't want him anymore, I still wouldn't share. If you can buy a truckload, then go buy a truckload for Chloe. Don't touch mine. My good mood was ruined early in the morning by them. The pain I had finally managed to calm down began to flare up repeatedly. Last night, I suddenly felt short of breath, and my vision was blurry, making it hard to see things clearly. The doctor told me these were signs of deterioration, and I had to be hospitalized. But I didn't want to go. If I was destined to die, I'd rather spend the time I had left seeing more of the world. Michael seemed angered by my words, or perhaps Chloe's crying was too loud, because he reached out and snatched them. When did you become so stingy? They're just a few tangerines. Chloe is younger. What's the harm in letting her have them? I pushed him hard, but he was too strong. He still managed to grab several tangerines from my arms in the chaos, stuffing them all into Chloe's hands. Chloe, holding the tangerines, gave me a defiant smile, utterly triumphant. Michael, the accumulated grievances of so long burst forth instantly. I finally couldn't hold back my emotions. My eyes reddened in an instant, and I raised my hand, slapping Michael hard. The crisp sound of the slap echoed in the backyard, stunning everyone, while everyone was frozen. I didn't even think, moving to snatch back the tangerines from Chloe's arms that rightfully belonged to me. Chloe refused, trying to hide behind Michael. One tangerine even fell to the ground. She didn't notice, or perhaps she did and did it on purpose, stepping on it, letting the juice splash everywhere. Such good tangerines, bought for me by Grandpa and Grandma early in the morning from the local town, were wasted just like that. Chloe. This time, I didn't care that Michael was standing in front of me. I raised my hand and swung another slap at Chloe's face. She tried to dodge, but my nails scratched her cheek perfectly. The vivid red mark made her instantly shriek. Ah, my face. Michael, my face is ruined. She threw all the tangerines she was holding onto the ground. Chloe. The moment Michael saw the scratch on her face, he became incredibly tense and distraught. He pushed me without even thinking. I was standing on the steps, already unsteady, and with that push, I fell straight to the ground. Buddy, who had been sleeping in Buddy's bed, came running to me, wagging his tail when he heard the commotion. Seeing me on the ground, he kept tugging at my clothes, trying to pull me up. Chloe, it's okay. It's just a mark. I'll take you to the hospital now. It won't scar. Don't be afraid. Don't cry. But didn't even glance at me. He quickly scooped up a distraught Chloe and rushed out of the BB, heading for the local town hospital. I was still sitting on the ground, not wanting to get up, when a sudden sharp pain struck my lower abdomen. The pain was so intense it made me want to bite my tongue off. Grandpa and Grandma, hearing the commotion inside, came out. Seeing me on the ground, they rushed over to help me up, but the pain in my lower body was severe, and I could feel a warm flow. I looked down, blood was slowly seeping through my white summer dress. 09 The child, who was never meant to be born, left even earlier than I expected. I thought he would at least stay with me for a few more months, allowing me to experience the magic of a blood connection in my final days, but push had made me lose this child entirely. I lay in the hospital bed. Grandma had made chicken soup for me, but my stomach was so nauseated and uncomfortable, it was almost impossible to swallow. After the miscarriage, I could no longer hide the fact that I had late-stage stomach cancer. When Henry and Grandma found out, they took turns staying with me at the hospital, cursing Michael and throwing all of his and Chloe's luggage out of the BB. Though I, an old woman, don't have much money, I still have my principles. I won't serve people like them. Grandma sighed, about to say something more to me, but my phone, with its shattered screen, rang. It was Michael. The moment I answered, he launched into a furious tirade. Grace, you've disappointed me so much. Chloe just wanted a few of your tangerines. Did you have to be so heavy-handed? She's just a young girl who just graduated from college, in the prime of her life, and you were so cruel, scratching her face and leaving such a long red mark. Get to the hospital now and apologize to her properly. Otherwise, Michael rattled on, but my head was throbbing, and I felt terribly unwell. So I cut him off directly. I'm pregnant. You're pregnant and you still have to come. What? You're pregnant? Michael, speaking, seemed to suddenly realize what I said. His voice abruptly rose, as if unsure, and he asked again, Grace, are you really pregnant? I hummed an affirmation, then added, I was pregnant. But you pushed me because of Chloe, and I lost the baby. The first child Michael and I had longed for 7 years died by his hand. 10 Michael practically ran to see me. His eyes were bloodshot, and he seemed unwilling to believe what I had said. Since he rushed into the hospital room, he remained silent, not speaking for a long time. Perhaps he was waiting for this moment. Grandma, specifically in front of him, repeated the doctor's words. If our girl hadn't been pushed, this baby wouldn't have been lost. Michael, you're truly something. Killing your own child with your own hands. It was a crushing blow to the spirit, to say the least. Michael stood by the bed, wanting to reach out and touch my face, but I turned away, not even wanting to look at him. It's probably for the best that this child is gone, after all. A child who isn't wanted will only suffer in life. My voice was very soft, the kind of profound weakness that comes after extreme exhaustion. Michael clenched his hands into fists at his sides, mumbling, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were pregnant. If you had known, you wouldn't have pushed me. Is that what you mean? I smiled at him, but as I smiled, tears streamed down my face. Then I slapped him hard again. Michael, you disgust me. That slap took all my strength, but Michael stood still, as if allowing me to vent my anger, so I didn't soften, continuing to slap him several more times until my entire palm ached before I stopped. Michael remained silent, just watching me, his eyes full of guilt. 11 It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, so when Chloe caused a scene at the hospital, threatening to jump from the hospital rooftop to demand a commitment, everything escalated. At that time, Michael was in my hospital room, taking care of me. Even though I repeatedly told him to get out, Michael acted as if he couldn't hear me, enduring my yelling and accusations, still tending to me according to the doctor's orders. For days, he hadn't gone to see Chloe. This hot-headed young woman's initial goal was simply to make me aware of her existence, to force Michael to make a final choice between me and her. But now he remained by my hospital bed, consumed by guilt over my miscarriage. Chloe finally couldn't hold back, climbing onto the hospital rooftop, attempting to use this tactic to pressure Michael. When news spread that someone was about to jump, Michael, watching Chloe in someone else's video, dropped the towel he was wringing with a splat, then bolted out of the room. I had lost count of how many times this had happened, how many times he had chosen to leave without a second thought because of Chloe. Thankfully, I no longer expected anything. A person facing death. The last breath I still held was to witness this ending, so I secretly evaded the nurses' checks and followed the crowd to the hospital rooftop. When I arrived, Chloe was screaming and crying loudly. Michael stood beside her, calling out to her repeatedly, his eyes filled with worry. Please come down. Can't we talk this through peacefully? Chloe shook her head. No. You know what I want. I've waited so long. I don't want to wait anymore, Chloe. Why do you have to make things so difficult for me? Michael looked tormented. He couldn't let go of the young and beautiful Chloe standing before him, nor could he immediately abandon the many years of affection he had for me. Moreover, he had just recently caused the death of his own child with his own hands, and was in a state of pain and remorse. After more back and forth, the other onlookers on the hospital rooftop watched with great interest. Chloe's gaze suddenly landed on me. In an instant, her expression turned vicious, and she lifted her leg, feigning a jump. Of course, she had no intention of dying, so easily embraced her, pulling her back from the hospital rooftop's edge, then held her tightly in his arms. Chloe, please don't do anything foolish again, okay? Chloe was also crying heartbrokenly, collapsing into his arms, but her eyes were fixed on me. Then tell me, do you love me? Michael was silent for a moment, under everyone's gaze. It was unclear whether it was sincere or to soothe Chloe's emotions, but he nodded. Chloe, I care about you. With a bang, I pushed over a nearby shelf. The items on the shelf flew off, landing squarely on Michael's head. It wouldn't make him bleed, but it was certainly painful enough. Before, everyone had been engrossed in the drama, but the noise I made drew all eyes to my face, even turned to look at me, his face instantly turning deathly pale. Grace, I pushed through the crowd, slowly walking to the center of the spectacle. It was like a makeshift stage, and I, a character about to make her final exit, would play my last part. I raised my hand and slapped Michael without a second thought. He didn't move, but Chloe, distraught, reached out to push me. Grace, how dare you hit Michael? Michael, however, stopped her, letting me slap him repeatedly. How dare you hit him? Ah, Chloe yelled at me, but the moment her voice fell, the slap that was meant for Michael's face landed on Chloe's. How dare I hit him? Because he's my husband and he's here, embracing you, acting like a scoundrel. Why can't I hit him? And you, a young woman who just graduated from college, knowing full well he's married, yet you shamelessly throw yourself at him. Tell me why. I spoke with conviction, ensuring that all the onlookers could hear me clearly, even with countless phones filming behind me. I felt no shame. After all, in this relationship, I had never once betrayed him. I had done nothing wrong. The ones who were wrong were Michael, who was married yet cheated, and Chloe, who knew he had a wife yet still pursued him. If anyone was to be drowned in public condemnation, it could only be them, not me. I slowly walked up to Michael, a desolate smile on my face, tears gradually streaming down. I had finally become a good actress, pretending to be shocked by something I already knew. My thoughts churned, and my stomach grew more and more nauseated. Michael, why did you betray me? Why? As an orphan with no parents, all my childhood memories were of loneliness, so I fell in love with romance novels, longing for the perfect, fulfilling love that the characters had, until I met Michael. We fell in love at first sight, promising to be together forever. In the end, it was not to be. I looked at him, clutching his collar tightly. The next moment, my stomach churned, and a metallic taste rose in my throat. I coughed up a mouthful of blood, and it all sprayed onto Michael's face. My body could no longer hold up, and my vision blurred. I slumped to the ground. In the moment before consciousness slipped away, I only heard Michael's anxious cry, Grace, but that was all. 12 When I next awoke in the hospital bed, Michael was sitting by my side. He held my hand tightly, his eyes bloodshot, looking utterly exhausted. Grace, you. He seemed to hesitate, his eyes full of self-reproach and regret. Immense guilt threatened to swallow him. I expressionlessly pulled my hand free, finishing his unspoken sentence. Late-stage stomach cancer. Dying soon. Are you happy about that? He closed his eyes, his expression deeply pained. I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's nothing really, just the pain at night, keeping me awake for hours. Sometimes my vision suddenly goes black, and I can't see what's in front of me, thinking I'm going blind, or standing perfectly fine, then suddenly collapsing, alone on the floor at home. Waking up frozen in the middle of the night, then struggling to get back up. I've been through all of this alone, and when I was going through it, Michael, where were you? I smiled at him, watching the pain and guilt in his eyes intensify, and I only felt a surge of satisfaction. Oh, you were on a romantic date with his mistress. You said you were busy with work, so even if I was in agony, I didn't dare disturb you. But what about you, Michael? When I was in the most pain, You were probably having romantic dates with Chloe, weren't you? She's a great cook. And pretty too. Younger and more beautiful than me. I probably won't live much longer. The child I finally had was also lost because of you. But it's okay. I'm going to die anyway. After I die, you can continue having romantic dates with Chloe. And you can have more children with her. As for the child who died, it'll be reincarnated with him. We'll be a family. And you won't be a part of it anymore. With every word I spoke, his face grew paler, until finally he painfully covered his ears. Stop talking, Grace, I beg you, stop talking. Why shouldn't I talk? Michael, when you were rolling around in bed with Chloe, did you ever wonder what I was doing at that moment? Is it too late to regret it now? I grabbed his wrist, refusing to let him have his way, preventing him from covering his ears, even forcing him to look into my eyes so he could clearly see the hatred in them. Michael, why aren't you the one who's dying? You were the one who cheated, the one who betrayed our relationship. So why am I the one who has to die? It wasn't fair, not fair at all. 13 Michael stayed by my hospital bed, refusing to leave for even a moment. Chloe came again, but this time, Michael didn't even glance at her, just stayed by my bed. The guilt and self-reproach in his eyes were almost crushing him. But I desperately wanted to see if there was any trace of love left in his gaze. Unfortunately, my vision was starting to blacken and blur, making it impossible to see that laughable love. Grace, the weather is lovely today. How about I take you for a walk? I was already in the late stages, with not much time left to live, coupled with the miscarriage. The damage to my body had multiplied several times over. I felt incredibly unwell just walking for a few minutes. Michael stayed by my side. And even though I treated him like air, he still wouldn't leave. I didn't look at him, nor did I want to get out of bed. Seeing my silence, the smile on Michael's face faded for a moment, but he quickly put on a cheerful expression again. It's okay if you don't want to go out. I'll just stay here in the hospital room with you. Do you want an apple? Or something else? With that, he started peeling an apple for himself. He even cut it into small, easy-to-eat pieces, skewering each one with a toothpick and thoughtfully bringing them to me. I still ignored him, treating him like he wasn't there. Seeing that I wouldn't look at him, Michael's expression grew even sadder. Guilt and self-reproach threatened to consume him. He managed a strained smile at me. It's okay if you don't like it. I'll just stay here with you. Always. I picked up my phone, and as if in an act of self-torture, I searched for the live stream replay, watching the intimate duo on the live stream camera, and then looking at Michael's face, growing paler by the moment. I couldn't even tell if I was punishing him or myself. Michael, you're so disgusting. I pulled away from his touch, my eyes filled with intense disgust and revulsion, which finally brought a hurt look to his own eyes. This went on for several days, and Michael was starting to lose control of his emotions. I handed him the divorce papers I had prepared long ago. If you still consider yourself a decent person, then sign them. I had already hired a lawyer to settle the assets. Every penny that belonged to me would remain mine. Michael shook his head, refusing to sign. We're husband and wife. We promised to be together forever since college. We can't get divorced, Michael. Could you please stop disgusting me? My stomach was churning, making me so nauseous I wanted to bite my tongue off. You got tangled up with another woman while I was sick, and even brought her to flaunt in front of me. Did you find this affair stimulating? When you were doing all these things, did you ever think about the fact that we were married? No, he hadn't. If he had held even a tiny thought of me in his heart, he wouldn't have agreed to that outrageous request. So in the end, he signed the divorce papers. I specifically added, before this, half of every penny you spent on Chloe belonged to me. I don't care how you handle your money, but I will get my share back from her. I wasn't a kind-hearted person. I kept those recordings and live stream replays simply to get revenge on those who hurt me when I felt like dying. Whether it was Michael or Chloe, everyone deserved to pay for their actions. These past few days, I hadn't been able to eat at all, sustained only by for drips. I had already lost a lot of weight. While sleeping at night, I secretly pinched my waist. There wasn't much flesh, and my ribs protruded from my chest. I was ugly, and I didn't want anyone to see me like this. So, while Michael was out buying things, I gritted my teeth, gathered all my strength, and secretly left the hospital. Grandpa and Grandma would take turns visiting me every day. Fearing they would worry, I left them a letter and all my savings. Although the money on that card wasn't much, I had already entrusted a lawyer to ensure that whatever amount of my property Chloe had squandered, she would have to pay back. All the money would be divided in half. One half would go to Grandpa and Grandma, and the other half would be donated to impoverished students in the foothills. It would be an offering of good fortune for me and my child. If there was a next life, I hoped my child would be healthy, and I would be healthy too, and in that world, there would be no Michael, no betrayal, only love, a perfect, fulfilling love. Speaking of which, if knew I was going to die, would he be sad? No one would feed him jerky treats anymore. No one would go mushroom picking with him in the mountains. He would probably be sad, wouldn't he? 14 Grace died. No one knew where she passed away. She disappeared from the hospital. Michael searched frantically, practically turning all of Willow upside down, but he couldn't find a trace of her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, taking nothing with her. However, she had made arrangements in advance. Half a month later, her ashes were delivered to the owner of the BB in the Willow foothills. When heard the news, Grandpa and Grandma had already placed the ashes in the gravesite. He knelt at the BB's entrance, just wanting to know the location of the gravesite. But Henry and Grandma refused to tell him, letting him kneel in the heavy rain, letting him collapse from exhaustion, wake up, and then continue kneeling until he fainted again. Grandpa felt a pang of sympathy, but Grandma held him back. Let him keep kneeling. Let him kneel until he drops dead outside if he's so determined. He can go apologize to our girl himself. Michael's eyes held desperate pleading. Just let me see her. Just one glance, please. Grandma still wouldn't budge. This selfish, heartless, and cold man only remembered all of Grace's good qualities after she died, but the person was gone. Any amount of guilt or self-reproach now was a joke. If such a person appeared at Grace's gravesite, it would only defile her path to the afterlife. Let him live with this guilt for the rest of his life. Live, or live a life worse than death. 15 When learned that Grace had died, her first reaction was happiness. She liked Michael. Their first meeting was on the university campus, where he, a senior from her department, had been invited back to their alma mater to give a speech. With just that one glance, she fell in love, so she deliberately created many chance encounters, eventually ensuring that this senior remembered her face. She spent a long time by his side, and on that alcohol-fueled night, Chloe finally got what she wanted. At first, Michael was always distant with her, but because of that night, to keep it from Michael's wife, she deliberately used it to manipulate him, making him come out to see her repeatedly. Some things, once they happen, set a precedent. Chloe watched Michael's gaze towards her gradually soften from its initial coldness, eventually becoming a subtle, almost doting affection. She knew she was going to succeed. She liked that mature, dignified man. She liked that he spent lavishly on her, and she cherished every moment she spent with him. But he had a wife, and she was destined to be the other woman hidden in the shadows. She was unwilling to accept this, so she wanted to take her place. She never expected Grace to have cancer, and that she would be gone before Chloe even had a chance to do anything. Chloe, full of joy, went to Michael, suppressing the happiness in her heart, pinching her thigh to squeeze out 2 tears. Sister is gone. I know you're sad, but you still have me. Last time was an accident. Even though I didn't get pregnant with your child, I'm still young, and will have one eventually. Michael, let me take care of you from now on, okay? She thought Michael would find her understanding. Even if he was grieving his wife's death now, he would eventually be moved by her tenderness. But she soon realized she was wrong. Michael, this man who she thought was not particularly firm in his affections, went mad after Grace's death, searching for Grace's gravesite all over the country. He said, I've only ever had one wife in my life, Grace. Chloe laughed in anger. She pointed to the hickey on her neck that had yet to fade, her eyes filled with sarcasm. If your love was so steadfast, you wouldn't have been so easily attracted to me, Michael. Admit it. You're just trash. Weak-willed trash. Michael was silent. He thought Chloe's words might not be wrong. He really was trash. Despite deeply loving Grace, he was still easily attracted to someone else, slowly falling into an abyss, ultimately causing his wife's death. Did a person like him truly deserve to live? Michael looked at his hands, and for some reason, he vaguely felt they were covered in fresh, hot blood, the blood of his child, the child he had personally killed. 16 Michael fell ill and was admitted to the hospital. His condition was also not good. He was disoriented all day, constantly saying his hands were covered in hot blood. The doctor wouldn't let him leave the hospital. Michael would yell and scream in his hospital room, saying he had to find his wife. However, before Grace passed away, she had already made those videos and footage public. Coupled with the existing popularity from the live stream, many people now knew about Michael's infidelity. He had cheated, caused the death of his child, and then his wife. Such a person would be reviled wherever he went. As for Chloe, in the past year or so, she had squandered too much money that wasn't hers. Now, a lawsuit had been filed, forcing her to return all of it. Grace had also sent those videos to her company. Chloe lost her job, sold all her designer bags and jewelry, but still couldn't make up the difference for her half. She wanted to beg Michael, but Michael was now in a state of madness, barely recognizing anyone. Still, Chloe held onto a last shred of hope and secretly snuck into the hospital to find Michael. On that day, Michael's emotions were highly volatile. He kept saying he wanted to find Grace, and upon seeing Chloe, he actually mistook her for Grace. He grabbed her hand and led her to the hospital rooftop. Chloe thought he still cared for her and was thrilled, tears streaming down her face. Just as she was about to say something to him, she saw Michael embrace her, and then they both toppled off the hospital rooftop. Chloe's eyes were filled with terror. She did love Michael, but ultimately, she loved her own life more. She didn't want to die, but it was too late. During the rapid descent, Michael seemed to suddenly regain consciousness. He stared at Chloe expressionlessly. "We are both sinners. It's time to atone." Two heavy thuds echoed as two more lives vanished from the world in that moment. 17 Grandma had lied. She hadn't buried Grace's ashes at all. Instead, she patiently waited for Michael to die. Then she and Grandpa returned to the countryside. The scenery there was beautiful, with clear waters and lush mountains, and a large flower field, just as Grace would have liked. Grace had left them a considerable sum for their retirement, but Grandma didn't keep a single penny. She donated it all. Grandpa and Grandma buried Grace not far from their old country home. There was a vast flower field, and that's where Grace slept. Buddy would bring a bouquet of flowers to Grace's gravesite every day, then wag his tail and lie there for the entire day. Grandma also loved to cook all sorts of delicious food and bring it to Grace. She always thought that such a gentle and kind-hearted girl shouldn't have had such a short life. Grandma sighed, slowly looked up at the sky, as if talking to herself. This life was too hard. May the next be sweeter. She shouldn't have died so young. If only she could have had a do-over. Time continued to flow. Perhaps in some parallel universe, there truly would be a chance to start over. In that universe, Grace would have the healthiest body. She would live a long life, happy and content. That's all for today's story. Thank you for listening. This is my channel. The tales I share drawn from life or woven from imagination are meant to offer you connection, reflection, and perhaps solace or newfound strength. If you long to see your own reflection in others' journeys, or seek a glimmer of light within the maze of emotions, subscribe to my channel. Listen with your heart. Explore the stories of life.